Today we're doing lesson 15.3, constructing exponential graphs, or exponential functions. So we worked on making graphs for the exponential equations and functions. Now we're going to work on creating the equations that go with those graphs. As a reminder, the equation that we've been using, f of x equals a times b to the x power. The a stands for the initial start value. B stands for the common ratio. If B is greater than 1, we call that a growth. So if your B value is a number that's bigger than 1, it's called a growth. If B is less than 1, but greater than 0, it's called a decay. So bigger than 1, we call it a growth. Less than 1, but bigger than 0 is a decay. Okay, for example 1, we're going to be working with discrete graphs again. And just a reminder, when we have a discrete graph, we do not connect the dots. So discrete means there's only a few points that they're talking about, or specific points that they're talking about. So the first few that we're doing are going to be discrete graphs, so don't connect the dots. Okay, for letter A, the equation is f of x equals 3 parentheses 1/2 to the x power. 3 times 1/2 to the x power. As a reminder, f of x just means y. That's the same thing. So that really this says y equals 3 times 1/2 to the x power. Bless you. Those are the same equations. Okay, the directions though for this question say with a domain of, and then it has that, bless you, that fun little brace looking thing. They only want us to use -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is discrete because they only want these points. That's it. They don't want to know every single dot, every single solution. They only want these exact solutions. Remember, domain means the x values. Domain is your x's. So it's saying if these are your x's, I want to see a graph that only has these graphed on them. Okay, so we're going to create a table. The table is only going to include these x values because that's all the question's asking about. So for my x's, I'm only going to use these ones. -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're going to use our graphing calculator or Desmos to come up with the y values. And instead of y, sometimes it'll say f of x. And then after we get that, we're going to write down what the points are that we need to graph. Okay, so grab either graphing calculator or open up Desmos. If you're using a graphing calculator, go into y equals. So normally you're right here in the blank screen. Click y equals and type in 3 parentheses half raised to the x power. If you're using Desmos, go ahead and type that in. And you need to pull up the table. The table on Desmos, you just hit the little gear shift that's up above the equation. And then press table. If you're on a graphing calculator, click second graph. And it'll give you the table. Okay, we only want to write down the numbers that go with the -1 through 4. So go ahead and look at your table. So when x was -1, what y was, and then we're also going to write down what these points are because we have to graph them in a minute. So we're going to be graphing -1, 6, 0, 3, 'Okay, because the question is only asking for these specific points, these are the only ones you're going to graph. Don't connect the dots. Don't put arrows anywhere. Okay, you do need some graph paper, or if you're doing your notes on your iPad, you do need to graph this. So if you pull up Canvas and you pull up my notes, there is a picture of a blank graph there. You're going to put in the dots at all of these points. Don't connect them. So if you need graph paper, go grab some graph paper right now. Maybe ask your neighbor if they need a piece too, so you can grab it for them as well. Or if you still have a piece from last week or from Tuesday. Okay, go ahead and look at your numbers. It looks like the biggest number on there is 6. So make sure when you create your graph, make sure you have space on the y-axis for it to get to 6. Everybody is doing this. You're not just saying, oh, I'm looking at the graph on my graphing calculator or on Desmos. You actually have to graph this. You're going to have to graph on your test. And I don't want to hear you say, I don't get it. So take your points and graph just these points. And obviously, with the decimals, you're going to kind of have to guess a little bit, guesstimate a little on where exactly the dot is. So when you're done, if you did it correctly, you should see a smooth curve starting. If you ever notice you're not getting that curve, it's probably one of your dots is wrong. Do not connect the dots. This is a discrete graph. It only wanted these exact points. And then when you're done, cut that out, glue that into your notes. That's the whole thing you got to do for that question. Is just I want to see those points. Okay, questions there? Okay, we're going to do another one. This one, you're going to be checking your answers with people around you, so make sure you have some graph paper. Everybody good? Does anyone need this up still? Okay. Okay, for 1b, the equation is f of x equals 3 parentheses 4/3 to the x power. 3 times 4/3 to the x power. And we're going to graph it with the domain of -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So take this equation. I only want you to use these x values. Domain means x, so these are your x's. It only wants these x's. Go ahead and put this into your graphing calculator or put it into Desmos. Come up with your table of values. And then you're just going to graph only those dots. Don't connect the dots. Okay, go ahead and work on that, and you can check answers with people sitting around you. Okay. Obviously, when it's a decimal, just write down a few of the decimal spots. And then when you come up with your graph, you're kind of guesstimating a little bit on those decimals, but your graph should look something similar to this. It should look like there's a nice smooth curve happening. Questions on those ones? Those ones seem to be pretty easy. Just don't connect the dots. So if they give you a domain of specific values, don't connect the dots. It's going to be a discrete graph. Okay, next example. We're going to go to example 2. Okay, example 2 is now going to give us some word problems. Just as a reminder, the equation we're going to be using, f of x, a times b to the x power. A stands for the initial value, the beginning point. B is your growth or your decay. So just as a reminder, as we're making these equations, the A value, that's the initial starting point. Your B is how much you're growing or decaying by. Okay, here is our first word problem. When a piece of paper is folded in half, the total thickness doubles. Suppose an unfolded piece of paper is 0.1 millimeters thick. Okay, so let's write that down. Paper is 0.1 millimeters thick. When you fold it, it doubles. So like when you fold a piece of paper, every time you fold it, you're doubling how many boxes, how many pieces of paper there are. Okay, I'm asking now just for an equation. There's no work to do here. It's asking us to come up with the equation of the total thickness. Total thickness they want to be T of n, and then they want us to use n for the number of folds. So really this is our y and this is our x. Y is going to be, or f of x is going to be T of n for this question. They want us to use T of n. If you're doing a paper test for me, I'm okay if you put the y and the x. But if you go to type it into HMH, a lot of times it marks it wrong if you don't put the right letters. Okay, so to come up with the equation, so f of x, they actually want us to use t of n equals, A stands for the initial value, the initial amount. The initial thickness of the paper is 0.1. Times the growth factor, how much it's growing by. Each time when you're doubling something, you're multiplying it by 2. When something doubles, it's multiplied by 2. And then normally we have an x up here, but they want us to use an n. That's all you're doing for these questions, is just coming up with the equation. You're not doing anything with the equation yet. Just keep in mind, or this is the same. If you wrote this, I'm okay with it. If you use x and y, like if you have to put this into your graphing calculator, you're going to have to use y and x, so just make sure you understand that this is the same as this. Okay, let's try another one. A savings account with an initial balance. Okay, initial balance in your bank account is $1,000. Okay, a savings account with an initial balance of $1,000 earns 1% interest per month. Okay, so the interest is 1%. That means that the account balance grows by a factor of 1.01 each month. Okay, so go ahead and jot down the growth factor is 1.01 because it's growing by itself, so the $1,000 stays, plus you get 1%, and 1% is 0.01. So that's where they're getting the growth factor of 1.1, but they're going to tell you that in the word problem. And then it says there's no deposits, no withdrawals. We're going to make B of T the account balance. After T, which will be months. It's time in months. So B of T is really your Y value. Your months of T is really your X value. Okay, let's create the equation then for this. So instead of saying Y, they want us to use B of T equals, when we write the equation, we start with what's the initial value. So the initial amount that's in the account is $1,000. So put 1,000 first. The next number, the B, is the growth or the decay, and it tells us the growth factor is 1.01. And then instead of using an X, they want us to use T. And there's your equation. Or you can write it Y equals 1,000 times 0.01 to the X power. I'm good with either one. Okay, now you're going to do one with your group of 4 around you. Okay, I'm going to read the word problem. A piece of paper is 0.2 millimeters thick. Okay, so the paper is 0.2 millimeters thick. A piece of paper that is 0.2 millimeters thick is folded. So keep in mind when it's folded, that means the growth is 2. Because it's doubling. Every time you fold something, it doubles. Write an equation for the thickness of the paper in millimeters as a function of the number of n folds. So we're going to say B of T. No, T of n, sorry, not B of T. T of n is going to be the thickness, and n is going to be the number of folds. Okay, see if you can come up with that equation with your group. Okay, here's your answer. Or you could have it as y equals. Questions there? Okay, this next example, this is the last one we're doing. This is on your test, and it takes some work, so make sure you're taking really good notes right now. Okay, example 3 is going to say write an equation. Keep in mind when you're writing the equation, it's going to be y equals a times b to the x power. So you're going to write an equation for a line or a curve that goes through 3, 12 and 4, 24. Okay, this comes up on your test. So we have these 2 points, and I have a curve that goes through them, and I need to come up with the equation. So the first thing you're going to do first is we want to find the b value. So to find the value of b, you're going to take y, what did I do? Y sub 2 and divide it by y sub 1. b equals y sub 2 over y sub 1. So we have 2 points. xy, xy. So take the second y, which is 24, divide it by the first y. 24 divided by 12 is 2. So I know the b value is 2. So when I go to write my equation in a minute, I know I'm going to put the 2 in for the b. The second step is now find the value of a. To figure what out a stands for, we're going to first pick one point. So in the question they gave us 2 points. Just pick one of them. I'm just going to go with 3, 12. So when I have 3, 12, we all know that 3 is our x, 12 is our y, right? I also know what b stands for from the first part of the question above. So I know my b, I know an x, and I know a y. So if I have this equation, I know the y, I know the b, and I know the x. I need to solve for a. So you're just going to take that equation, y equals a times b to the x power, and you're just substituting in the 3, the 12, and the 2, and solving it for a. Okay, so y, right here, y is the number 12. A, I don't know what a is, so just bring down a. That's what I'm going to try and solve for. The b, I already found that out in the last part. That's a 2. And the x is 3. So now I'm just going to solve this to figure out what a stands for. So I'm going to do exponents first. 2 cubed. 2 times 2 times 2. What's 2 times 2? Times 2. 8. Two cubed. 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. And we know when things are touching, they're multiplying, right? So this says a times 8. I'm just solving, just like we've done this 1,000 times. Okay, go ahead and get a by itself. Undo multiplying by 8. So look at the side that has the letter. Right now it says 8 times a, so to undo multiplying by 8, I'm going to divide by 8. If I do that to one side, you have to do it to the other side. 12 divided by 8. Your calculator will reduce this fraction if you don't know how to reduce it in your head. So 12 divided by 8. So if you have a graphing calculator, I've showed you guys this a couple times. If you have a graphing calculator, so put 12 divided by 8. You can hit enter if you want, but click math and the number 1. Enter. Your fraction is 3/2. If you have Desmos, your Desmos does this as well. So on Desmos, type in 12 divided by 8. Right next to it, in the blue part, there's a fraction. Just press that. It'll convert it and reduce it down to 3/2. So A is 3/2. So now I know what the A is and I know what the B is, so I can go ahead and write my equation. So the final answer, you can either write it as f of x, or you could write it as y. The equation always looks like this, equals A, we know A stands for 3/2, times B, and B is 2, to the x power. So either of these are good with me. You can either write it as f of x equals 3/2 times 2 to the x power, or you can put y equals 3/2 times 2 to the x power. Okay, let's try another one like that. This is 3b. I have a line that goes through 1, 3 and 2, 9/4. And I want to write the equation in that format. Okay, so the first step is find B. So to be B, we're going to do y sub 2 divided by y sub 1. So 9/4 divided by 3. 9/4 divided by 3. You can either do that on your calculator or 9/4 divided by 3. Just use what your 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade teachers taught you. Keep, change, flip. Okay, go ahead and divide that. 9/4 divided by 3. Either use your calculator or use your brain. Keep, change, flip. 9/4. Keep, change, flip. So 9/12. That reduces down. 3 goes into both of them. 9 divided by 3, 12 divided by 3. Okay, so 3/4 is your B value. Okay, second step now is to find A. So to find A, you're going to pick one of the points. Let's pick the one that doesn't have a fraction in it, right? So I have 1, 3, so that means 1 is x, 3 is y. And I already have the B from above. B is 3/4. Okay, we're going to take y equals A times B to the x power, and we're going to substitute in 1, 3, and 3/4. So go ahead and substitute in the x, the y, and the b. So rewrite that equation with A as the only letter. So y is really the number 3. A I don't know, so keep the letter A there. B is 3/4. X is a 1. Okay, now we're taking this equation and we're going to solve it for A. We want to get A by itself. So first I got to deal with the exponent. 3/4 to the first power. Anything to the first power is just that same number, right? So it's just 3/4. Okay, go ahead and solve for A. Look at the side that has the A. Get rid of multiplying by 3/4. Either use your calculator or do keep, change, flip. So you're really dividing by 3/4. So right now this says 3 divided by 3/4. Keep, change, flip. Keep, change, and flip. I can cross reduce out the 3's, and I get 4 is A. Okay, now we know the A and the B, so go ahead and write the equation for me. I know my B value, I know my A value. Now come up with your equation. So when you write it, it should be in this format. So you could write it as y equals, or you could write it as f of x. I don't care, either way is good with me. We put the A first, then the B, and then raised to the x power. Either of these are good answers with me. So notice how much work that's taking. So when I'm seeing you working on HMH, if you don't have paper in front of you, I'm just assuming you're guessing. You just keep trying over and over again, or you're just copying from someone. Because there's no way you're doing this in your head. Okay, here's the last one we're doing for today. You can work with the people sitting around you. Come up with the equation for a line that goes through -2, 2/5 and -1, 2. And when you're done, it should be written in y equals A times B to the x power format. Okay, come up with that equation, please. Okay, check your answer. 10 times 5 to the x power. So here's the work for it, especially if you're watching the video. First you had to figure out what B was. So I did 2 divided by 2/5, figured out B is 5. Next, to figure out what the A is, I used this point for x and y, plugged it all in. 5 to the negative first power, you can just put that in your calculator. You could have it as 0.2, or it comes out as 2/10, which is 1/5. And then finish it, and A is 2, or A is 10. Okay, tomorrow we will do more practice on this. So that's all for the notes today.